it's important for us to remember that just because these things are childlike does not mean that they aren't meant to heal us as well.
Mm.
And when we dig into it and when we give ourselves the opportunity to learn from them, the quality of our lives change. Like I want to be that mom and that person that just in the world in general, I'm not walking around and my primary emotions are angry and tired. I don't want them to see that. And I don't want to be that.
So we're switching things up a bit for this episode. And I know usually we have a parent coaching session and then we talk about it. And today we're actually going to talk to one of our, I would say, one of the world's favorite parent coaches and Jai graduate, Destini Ann. If you're not familiar with Destini, she is a force when it comes to spreading the message, the mission of parenting peacefully, of breaking generational patterns of harm, of doing our own inner work as the best hack to improving our parenting. Well, really, the relationship that we have with our kids. And I asked Destiny to come on because a week or two ago, we posted a reel to our shared Instagrams, Destiny's Instagram, and our Instagram here at the Jai Institute for Parenting that like blew up and went crazy in a way that I haven't seen. I mean, we make good content, Destiny, but this was something else.
Yeah, for sure.
And it really struck me because it's like it was a deep message and it was a profound insight. Let's play the reel.
Like most kids, I was not celebrated for doing regular kid stuff, being loud, being curious, having a bunch of energy. No, I was celebrated for things like maturity, intelligence, independence. Like, good job, Destiny, for doing things that are not inherently childlike. Even though you're a child, we love that. It's convenient for us. Here's the problem with that. Now that I'm a parent, guess what one of my biggest triggers is? Kids just being kids. Especially in front of other people. When you are celebrated for convenient behaviors but criticized for behaviors that probably just make you become hypercritical of yourself, and as a result you become hypercritical of your children because they are a reflection of it. You get what I'm saying? But here's the thing, their developmentally appropriate behaviors are not a reflection of me. They're a reflection of their brain development and their temperament. And so when their behaviors trigger me, I'm constantly asking myself, why is this triggering me, and is this my stuff? And if it's my stuff, let me not project it on them. This is tough work, okay? Yeah, follow me and Jai.
I'm curious to ask you, Destiny, like, was there a specific something that happened that had you have this insight? Like, where did that even come from in your amazing soul?
Yeah. So I would say maybe I do check-ins with my kids. How am I doing? You know, how are you feeling about our relationship? And so maybe 2 months ago, I had asked my oldest, and she said, well, I kind of think you've been a little hard on Phoenix. Like you've just been a little irritated with the 6-year-old. And I asked her to give me some examples. And I said, wow, this sounds like how you are with your sister sometimes. You just don't have the capacity. And so that month, I was just very aware of when I was not as playful or as open to her little quirks and things. I was also aware of the way that her sister responded. And I said, wow, if I'm not careful, I can create a culture where my biggest value, freedom, doesn't apply to everybody, doesn't apply to everybody's personality. So thank you to the 11-year-old for checking me on that. And I kind of was just exploring, like, well, where is that coming from? And asking myself those questions. And I was like, I have to share this because it's something that I obviously worked through in Jai and recognized. And this was a refresher and a reminder. And so I was like, I want to articulate that to people because I know that it's something that a lot of us can relate to. Not this idea that kids should just be able to play whenever and do whatever they want to do, but this idea that there are some of us walking around that feel so physically and mentally triggered by just normal kid stuff. Just
Mm.
kids just being themselves, even in moments where it's appropriate. And I felt myself 2 months ago slipping into that pattern. So that's why I made it.
Mm. It's so profound because it's like you'll hear people complaining about kids on airplanes or, being disturbed when there's a loud family in a restaurant. And I remember seeing this post on Twitter about, I think it was like in Italy, like in Italy, if there was a kid crying in a restaurant, the whole restaurant would be there, like trying to like help the mom and play with the kids. And it makes me so sad that our culture has forgotten this communal aspect of like it actually makes me feel like I want to cry of raising children and I just that's heartbreaking,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, for
It's hard.
sure.
I noticed in the comments of the video, of course, we always get people who want to like push back on it. And one of the ideas that I saw bubble up was this idea, well, if we don't have expectations of children to be more mature and act more responsibly and know when it's time to be quiet and know when it's time to, make themselves seen and not heard, how will they ever learn that? And I'm curious about how what do you think about that?
Yeah, I got that a lot. And I first want to say that the video wasn't saying that there shouldn't be a balance, and that I think that it's a bad thing that my parents praised me for growing developmentally. It was more so that I wish that there was a balance, that I also got just seen, seen for just being who I was and not being irritating. But we see that in our society, that there is this childism where children, I don't know if you heard that honk. We see that in our society where there is this childism where children's needs are not prioritized just in our day to day. And it makes me extremely sad as well, because there's this notion that we have to force our children to learn things, and that modeling isn't enough, that encouraging isn't enough, and that doing life with our children in a certain way isn't enough. And I know that that comes from fear, that fear says fix it thing and love says to, create the environment. I know that's where it comes from, so I can empathize with it. But I've just seen in my own personal experience that both can be done, that we can still teach them and they can learn how to move through this society without losing their core and without feeling safe to be themselves.
Yeah. It's such a vicious cycle because if we demonstrate to our children from an early age that their needs don't matter, that they shouldn't prioritize themselves, that they're not worthy of attention and affection and acknowledgement, it's not like there's some magical switch that flips, when we become 18 or 21 or
Mm-hmm.
35. And, then we have the next generation of people who are conditioned to believe that their voices don't matter, that they should what's that word? Subserviate? Is that the right word?
It sounds right.
Okay, we're just gonna go with it.
Make themselves small.
Thank you for giving me what's that expression? Like, why use a dollar word when you can use a 10-cent word? Thank you,
Yeah, there
Destiny.
you go.
Yeah, to make ourselves small. And this is what causes, I think especially for women, so much of the suffering, the inner suffering and discomfort and pain and loneliness that we experience as adults. And so, it's like, why aren't we allowing our kids to know that they matter?
Yeah.
It's a hard shift to make.
It is. But what's interesting, going back to the balance of it happening on its own, is that when they're in that joy state, when they're in that play state, that free state, that is when they are in the best state to learn
Mm.
and to gain from us what we're trying to teach. And that's when they're in their executive state. And so it's almost funny that we are bothered by that state when it's exactly what they need to be doing in order for us to not have to force and not have to yell. Like, I mean, when Phoenix is playful, when she's in play mode, if I join that with her, collaboration is easy. And the thing about it is it's easy for both of us. I always ask like parents, okay, but how did you feel at the end of that experience? How did both of y'all feel?
Mm.
Was it worth it that she took the bath tonight, but you were in the bed shaming herself and she went to bed disconnected. Was it worth it? And so that's that. It doesn't have to be either or, it can be both and. But the both and is the gateway to the both and is genuinely be their authentic selves and be childlike and be the fullest expression of wherever they are.
Yeah. I feel so much pain under, right? Like everything that we do here, there's always like this kernel seed, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
underneath the surface of not having had that as a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not having been able to express ourselves freely, to let all of our big energy out, to be celebrated for our childlikeness. And so it can be such a powerful invitation for us to remember what it's like to be a kid when we
Mm-hmm.
open ourselves up to the childlike experience of the kids in our world now. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And that's that. I think if somebody's looking for a practical way to not be as triggered by this or to shift, that's it, is to give yourself permission to actually go into those moments with them and to be silly even when it's uncomfortable and when it feels awkward to still do it. And that's kind of what that shift was for me, where I was like, you know what? The things are going to get done. The important things are going to get done when they come home from school today. I'm just going to like be in it with them. I'm just going to go through the routine, prioritizing some of what is important for them. And so I'm going to, when she's silly dancing over there and I'm on my laptop, I'm going to close it and go silly dance with her. And all the things still got done. They might have got done an hour later. But they still got done and I felt good. And the powerful piece of that is that we are rewiring our brains. And then so when she does something that's triggering,
Mm.
it's actually less triggering. And I don't have to coach myself every time. The more that we practice, it's just like, oh,
Ah,
huh, that didn't bother me. Exactly.
I was
Over time.
thinking about this the other day. How many of us are walking through life pissed off, ticked
Mm,
off, irritated, committed to thinking about the things that are hard in our lives. And it's almost like we forget that there's another option,
yep.
and I think
Yeah.
for most adults, it's like, gosh, imagine being a kid and looking at mom or looking at dad and being like, whoa, that's what adulthood looks like. And that's the expectation for my life. Like, who made the rule that adults need to be so serious? Can we break it? Can we break the rule, Destiny?
Can we? And oh, you just struck something with me
Mm.
because I had this conversation maybe 2 weeks ago that I didn't realize that those were the core like vibes that I got when I grew up. My sweet, sweet mama. Like I would say happiness, visible happiness was maybe 20% of the time. And the rest of the time was mad or tired.
Mm.
And what you just said is imagine a child looking at that. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I just thought it was normal. I just thought it was normal. And God, I wish that I could like just have invited her into what I was experiencing as a kid, but it was uncomfortable for the adults. So now not only am I not experiencing it, but y'all don't get to experience it either. And we have this whole home and culture where everybody's on eggshells, everybody's waiting for the next big blow up, everybody's waiting for the next shoe to drop or the next issue when we genuinely could all be in a state of calm, in a state of regulation, in a state of joy. And so I I think for me, it's important for us to remember that just because these things are childlike does not mean that they aren't meant to heal us as well.
Mm.
And when we dig into it and when we give ourselves the opportunity to learn from them, the quality of our lives change. Like I want to be that mom and that person that just in the world in general, I'm not walking around and my primary emotions are angry and tired. I don't want them to see that. And I don't want to be that.
You
Mm,
said something so profound that I want to loop back to it. You said, when I was a kid, I didn't know that it was anything that was wrong or that it could be different because it was what is. And I think that's really important for us to remember as parents, right? Like kids come into the world and they're a blank slate, right? Like if we were like,
yeah.
oh, this is a shoe, they would be like, oh yeah, shoe. And for the rest of their life, they would think it was a shoe until kind of like something was like, no, dude, that's a mason jar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same with context. It's why abused children still love their parents. That's all they know. They don't have
Mhm.
a experience or a worldview beyond the confines of their lived experience.
Yeah.
And so as parents, we have this like wild opportunity to create the belief systems and the mindset and the worldview, optimism, pessimism, right? Like that's what is for kids.
Hmm.
They don't get to
Yep.
choose.
Yeah, for sure. And it's creating that internalized belief. And sometimes we get so caught up in trying to fix the external circumstances that we don't see the power in our language with them in terms of beliefs. So if you are exhausted and if you are tired and you don't necessarily have the resources to change it right this second, that repair conversation, it could be, hey, I yelled and that wasn't okay. I've been walking around super tired, and I want you to know that's not how it should be. I deserve better, and you deserve better. That is what it is right now, but I'm going to work on figuring something else out. And even that is shifting what the child believes about your behavior. Maybe it's not changing right this second, and you're in a process of growing and learning and transforming, but recognizing that you can still help shape your children's beliefs during this season and during this period, how you take accountability and how you speak about your behaviors.
I call that walking your talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, um, I think traditional parenting was like, don't talk to the kids about real life. Like, don't talk to them about what's going on. If there's a challenge in the family, like that's for adults, keep that behind closed doors. But the thing is, the kids can feel it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they are tuned to our micro expressions. They can literally like sniff us out.
That's
Quite literally.
important. What you just said is very important. They recognize it. Ask them, and you'll be like, oh my God, what? You're noticing that? Yeah.
Oh
Keep
yeah.
going. Sorry.
No,
People
I
rarely say that, but it's
thank
true.
you. It's so true. And so then what happens is if we don't address the elephant in the room or walk our talk, hey, here's what was happening for me. Here's what I noticed about my behavior. How can we work together to make this better going forward? Then a whole narrative gets spun up that is rarely founded in truth about what's
Yep.
actually going on. And that narrative informs their identity of their whole adult lives, of what they deserve in relationship. And so it's like by walking our talk, we can have bad days out the, wazoo. We're humans, but we're going to tell them the truth in age appropriate ways. I don't know.
Hmm.
I think people think that I overshare with my kids. I'm super honest with them. I've been that way from when they were really young. Our family went through a really painful divorce. We've had financial struggles, and I've always just kind of told them what's going on. And I think, I mean, maybe we should ask them, but I think what they would say is that made them feel like I really trusted them.
Hmm.
And there's also like the shadow side of that, right? Which is like maybe I overburdened them a little bit. I don't know. I got to explore that. Another conversation for another podcast. Destiny, you
But
can coach
again,
me.
it's how. But then again, it is the how, right? Because, like you said, they're picking up on it anyway. And it's if
Right.
they're seeing it, then I need to be saying it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, them with their developing brains are going to create those stories and those limiting beliefs, like you said, that may or may not be true. And so you're doing the responsible thing. You didn't just go through a divorce, they were there, they were present for it. I'm
Yeah.
sure they recognized the difference in their lives when you were having financial struggles versus when you weren't. They were seeing it. So you did the responsible thing and said it. And so I would argue that,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
kudos,
Thank you.
Kiva.
Yeah.
So we had this when we had this conversation about how am I doing. She said, you kind of seem like angry. And I said, no, she said, you seem sad. She said, you seem sad lately. In my head, I'm like, it's not about nothing. I'm walking on a cloud. Like things are going great. And so I said, next time I seem sad, can you let me know? That whole next week, she didn't say anything. And I said, hey, do I seem sad right now? She said, yes, very. And I said, I'm tired. You are interpreting my tired as sad. I said, okay, mommy needs to work on that. I am
Mm.
tired lately. And this is why I'm tired lately. And I'm going to do this to change that. But also, it's good that we're talking about it and we're clarifying so you understand the difference. Because had I not done that, you grow up in years and years of experiences and you're just like, my mom was always sad.
And
And
most likely,
that's
my mom
normal
was always sad because of
of
me.
me. Yeah, because I'm around all the time. So it must be me because I don't, because the only thing that happens in a parent's life to a child is parenting. That's it. That's it. So if you're parenting and you're sad, you must be sad because of me. It's a very different narrative than even I'm tired. That's a very different narrative. And I'm like, well, Sissy woke up a few times this week, and so I just haven't had as much rest. But I've got a solution for that. And so I asked her yesterday. I said, "How's my mood right now?" She said, "Oh, you seem like way happier." And just because we were able to have that conversation and walk it out, that's emotion coaching. And that's her seeing me recognize my emotions, me have plans for them, me understand how to support myself. I think that it's important to involve our kids in that. Now she has a story. She has a clearer story than what would have happened had she just been sitting here with her beautiful 11-year-old brain processing my adult stuff.
Oh, love that so much. So good. So, if someone's listening to this and they had a shared experience of not being allowed or given permission to be a child, are there some ways that you found to kind of reparent yourself beyond the interactions with your children?
Mm. I mean, so many of the like obvious doing childlike things, but something that really struck a chord with me actually from Rebecca, our dear beloved sage Rebecca.
No. Oh, hell.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Watch episode 2 of this podcast if you don't know who we're talking about. And then you'll come hail Rebecca with us.
But it's just, talking about parts work and how we lovingly recognize that part of us that is in fight or flight with our kids. And for me, that has been having that conversation with myself before I interact with my kids or when I'm about to snap or whatever, shifting that narrative from an irritation, why can't I do this? Why do I keep doing that? Why did I mess up, to this like loving, calm, I got this, Destiny. Let's just take a second and then I'm going to handle it. Or after something has happened, having the conversation with myself of, well, of course you felt that way. Of course you did. That makes sense. Like validating the maybe triggered parts, the tender parts of myself instead of beating myself up when I mess up. I think that is what reparenting right now looks like for me. Not trying to fix myself as a parent, but just recognizing that these are the parts now. Like Rebecca, these are the parts now, and none of them are bad parts, and all of them deserve support. And the reason that they are screaming so loudly is because they aren't getting support. And I can either continue that pattern by beating myself up, or I can start to do repair with myself. And I promise you that has made the biggest difference in me not walking through this journey of constantly having to check my triggers, but instead, finally, finally moving into a season where my triggers sound like small little voices.
Mm.
Ah,
Thank the Lord. So
for Rebecca. No, just kidding. For
I think
y'all, for Jai, just
for
in
me,
general,
aw.
truly.
Yeah, Jai is a thing. And I'm so grateful. And I think for me, having had a similar, like I started cooking dinner when I was 6 years old as a latchkey kid. My mom is amazing, 1970s, like feminist, big shoulder pads, big career person. And I had to, I was an adult at a really young age. And I think for me, my greatest gift has been remembering to return to wonder, like letting
Mm,
myself be amazed. Like, like I am in a metal cylinder catapulting through the air at 500 miles an hour. This is amazing. Like I can get on the Wi-Fi. What? And I remember making that switch. It's been, gosh, probably 10 or 15 years where it's like everything is just like fine and it's just like, wait, no, this is all amazing.
yeah. Ooh, I love that one. I could like cry staring at a tree. I'm one of those people. So I love that. And thank you for bringing that back into my awareness. That's good stuff.
Mm. Destiny, we just love you so much. I love you so much.
I love you too.
If you're just meeting Destiny for the first time, you can find her on Instagram at Destiny Ann. Her book, VIP, Very Intentional Parenting, is available on Amazon and bookstore websites and
Everywhere.
everywhere. And I know you'll be back. If you have any questions that you want us to bring to the conversation, you can email us at support@jiinstituteforparenting.com. Have a beautiful day, Destiny. Hugging you through the screen.
Love you.